Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
This unbelievable tactical battle between Arteta and Klopp ended 2-2 with Liverpool dominating the XG, a result that will have strong implication for both the title and the battle for Champions League football. Both managers made some strange tactical choices at times, but what exactly were the tactics from Klopp and Arteta? Let's take a look. And we'll begin with Liverpool on the ball, as their in-possession play also left them massively vulnerable defensively. From the goal kick, for most of the match Liverpool were looking to build with a back three, and for the most part this did not go well. That back three could be formed by Alisson being the third centre back and Konate splitting out wide with Van Dijk the other side. This would then facilitate Robertson to be a little bit higher, with Jota tucking in, and perhaps what was most interesting was that Trent played as a dedicated pivot for the most part alongside Fabinho, so that the build-up shape could look like this. The alternative to this, especially when Liverpool was slightly higher up the pitch, was to still have Trent and Fabinho as the pivots, but now it was Van Dijk as the central centre-back, and Robertson actually operated quite deep in this match. So they would still have their midfield box, and their shape could look something like this. However, Arsenal were very quick to adapt and looked to press high up, especially in that first half. This would be through Jesus leading the charge, and Odegaard was often a second presser alongside Jesus, whilst Partey and Xhaka could operate deeper, at least initially. What was most interesting in these scenarios was that rather than stay out wide or look to cover Konate, Martinelli simply operated in a more man-oriented manner, following Trent into these central regions so that they now had closer to more of a midfield box, often with Odegaard initially starting on a pivot and then looking to press, so that his cover shadow was covering one of the men, and Saka could be drawn higher up onto Robertson. So here we see the press with Jesus on one centre-back, Odegaard had been on Van Dijk, with Saka higher on Robertson. But the main focus should be here, where Martinelli has come infield with Trent to prevent him getting any easy access. More than just struggling to play through the centre, it also meant that Konate would often be the man to receive wider with a little bit more time and space. However, whilst he is more than competent on the ball, he's not necessarily built to be the most aggressive build-up option under pressure in these deeper positions, so Liverpool did at times struggle to get out. And we did see that at times, Martinelli could actually start wider when necessary, and Arsenal once again are so fluid this season, and Xhaka would instinctively push up onto Trent. The danger, of course, would now be that Liverpool did have that 4 versus 3 that they wanted in the midfield. However, what Arsenal did, rather than get Gabriel to move on to Henderson, was often have Zinchenko in a more inverted position, with Gabriel moving wider in order to deal with Salah, who would often be right up on the shoulder of the defender, so that they still had something like a 4 versus 4. And whilst Liverpool's build-up shape was not always the most successful, there were reasons for Klopp opting for this. And the most pressing of those was this 1 versus 1 between Salah and Gabriel, and what we would often see, either by working it into Trent, who would play around the corner to the dropping Salah, or Alisson even looking to go directly in behind, with Salah dropping and drawing Gabriel high, was that there would now be a massive gap in the defensive area, and time and again, Henderson would then look to break into that space, leading to much danger. Here we see that Martinelli had been more central when Trent was inverting, and it's Zinchenko who's come in centrally to deal with Henderson high in the right half space, which creates that space for Salah to drop into and receive. As soon as he does, he draws Gabriel, and Henderson is making the run, well tracked by Zinchenko, and this time the pass doesn't come through from Salah. This is much later on in the game, but the principle was the same, with Xhaka high up on Trent, and Alisson has gone long to Salah for the 1v1. This time Gabriel's in two minds, and Zinchenko has let his man go, so Henderson makes the run, eventually leading to Henderson getting into this promising position. What is interesting, however, is that this use of Trent in the double pivot is perhaps an admission from Klopp that they lack deep progression from the midfield regions, compared to situations when Arsenal used the same midfield box in order to free up their goal threats and attacking threats who are free eights like Odegaard and Xhaka, or when City do it to free up the likes of Gundogan and De Bruyne in these regions. For Klopp, it seemed much more like looking to find a solution to a problem deeper in the midfield due to that lack of progression. But even higher up, operating with Trent as a pivot, meant that on the transition they were extremely vulnerable, as there were two possibilities. When Arsenal won the ball, we often saw that Martinelli, rather than defending deep, was looking to stay higher up the pitch, so he could potentially receive a switch with a little bit more room, as Trent now had a lot more distance to make up in order to cover Martinelli. Alternatively, what it would mean is that if Konate instead had to come over, now this back three was spread across the length of the pitch, meaning there were massive chasms that Arsenal could look to attack. So in this scenario, the transition actually doesn't work for Arsenal, but you can see the potential as Trent was high up as a pivot and Martinelli is already looking to be released into this massive gap in behind. And just moments earlier we see that Trent was in a pivot position, so when Liverpool lose the ball he looks to counter-press, meaning he gets caught high up the pitch. So now with Trent still central, the switch to Martinelli comes in, and having a gap this big between your centre-backs is not ideal. But again, despite some of the weaknesses of the shape, there were strengths for Klopp, as for the most part, when deeper or even high up the pitch, Arsenal were defending in a 4-4-2 with Odegaard and Jesus higher up, Saka on the right and Martinelli on the left, though he did tend to stay slightly higher. So what this now meant was that with Henderson in the half space as well as Salah in this position, if Martinelli did not track back, Liverpool had the potential to overload Zinchenko in this region. This could be through Salah once again dropping deep, drawing Zinchenko, then looking to play in Henderson, or what we also saw a lot of was that Henderson could start as the right winger, allowing Salah, Jota and Hakpo all to be in positions to look to flood the box when the cross did come in. But Arsenal's right hand side was also a major problem when it came to defending, especially in that second half. So in the first half, Robertson pretty much exclusively operated deep, and what that would mean is that Liverpool would have at least one spare man in the midfield, that is if Odegaard was operating deeper, or if Odegaard was high, they now had two spare men. But rather than just look to stick in the centre of the pitch, they looked to overload the wide regions, and this was primarily through Jones looking to move to the left hand side and receive, so that now he and Jota would have 2 versus 1s, which we did see a lot of. And here we actually see the build up to Liverpool's first goal. And it is a bit of scrappy play, so it's a little bit different, but the principles are the same, with Liverpool having this overload in the midfield region, this time with Gakpo looking to move deep. Saka is higher on Robertson, and this creates space for Jones and Jota to look to attack down the flank, with White being drawn to Jota. So once again we have this 2 versus 1 because a midfielder has moved wide and Saka is on Robertson instead, eventually leading to the goal. But Arsenal lost control of the game because they became more and more passive as the match went on. This 4-4-2 was already getting them outnumbered at times in the midfield regions, and it only got worse, as Robertson's attacking influence increased greatly in the second half, and he went from just 6 touches in Arsenal's half in the first to over 26 in the second. So he was now providing all the width on the left hand side, forcing Saka to operate much deeper. And with just this double pivot, Liverpool was still looking to commit several men into the box whenever they could to get on the end of crosses. So this meant that Xhaka in particular could drop deeper, looking to even up the numbers in the box so that there would be less free men. What this did of course mean was that at times there was a massive gap in central regions that Partey was looking to control, as Arsenal were only dealing with the back line but not the midfield threat, meaning that oftentimes when the ball broke, a Liverpool man would be there to pick it up. And this box overload eventually led to the goal. This was a strange performance from Liverpool, where they looked ridiculously vulnerable at times defensively, but yet put on one of their best attacking displays. It is odd that Klopp is aware that defensively, Trent isn't the best, but yet his systems seem to leave Trent in riskier and riskier defensive positions. In part 2 of this video, that is probably linked in the cards now, we will focus on what the Gunners did in possession, as well as giving out the managerial tactical scores. So hit like and subscribe so you don't miss that.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. so head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out.